James Wilson drove his old Ford down the lonely road as rain beat against the windshield. The wipers squeaked back and forth, fighting against the heavy downpour. It had been a long day at the community center where James worked. His back ached, and his eyes felt heavy. All he wanted was to get home, have a hot shower, and fall into bed. Through the sheets of rain, James spotted a car on the side of the road. Next to it stood a woman looking lost and worried. James slowed down. He could just drive by. He was tired, it was raining, and helping would mean getting soaked, but something inside wouldn't let him pass by someone in need. He pulled his car behind hers and turned on his hazard lights. Taking a deep breath, he stepped out into the cold rain. "Need some help?" James called out, water immediately soaking through his jacket. The woman turned toward him. She was blonde, dressed in a smart business suit that was now getting wet. She looked to be in her 40s. When she saw James approaching, her face showed both relief and a hint of worry. "Yes, I've got a flat tire," she said, gesturing to the front wheel of her expensive-looking car. "And I've got this meeting that determines my entire career. Of all the times for this to happen." James gave her a friendly smile. He could see she was unsure about him, a stranger on a dark, rainy road. He kept his distance and spoke calmly. "I'm James," he said. "I can change that tire for you in no time. You'll make your meeting." The woman studied his face for a moment, before her shoulders relaxed a little. "Emma Thompson," she replied. "I'd be ever so grateful for your help." James nodded and went to work. He asked her to pop the trunk so he could find the spare tire and jack. Emma followed him, holding her umbrella over his head as he searched through her trunk. "How you always carry everything you need in here?" James asked, finding the spare tire neatly stored with all the necessary tools. "My father taught me to be prepared," Emma said, "but he never taught me how to actually change a tire." James laughed softly as he pulled out the spare and tools. "Well, we all have different skills. Today you needed mine. Tomorrow I might need yours." The rain continued to pour as James got down on the wet ground. His jeans soaked through immediately, but he focused on the task. He positioned the jack and began lifting the car. "So what do you do, James?" Emma asked, still holding the umbrella. "Over him. I work at the local community center," he replied, grunting as he loosened the first wheel nut. "I run programs for teenagers who need some extra support." Emma raised her eyebrows. "That sounds rewarding." "It is," James said, working quickly despite the rain dripping down his face. "Those kids just need someone to believe in them, someone who won't give up on them when things get tough." Emma watched him work in silence for a moment. "That's really admirable." James shrugged as he removed the flat tire. "Just doing what needs doing, like changing this tire." They talked more as James fitted the spare tire. Emma told him about her job at a large company, how she'd worked her way up, and how today's meeting could mean a big promotion. James listened, asking questions between tightening wheel nuts. "There we go," James said finally, lowering the car back to the ground. "Good as new. Well, at least until you can get a proper replacement." Emma checked her watch. "And with 15 minutes to spare before my meeting. You're a lifesaver, James." James packed the flat tire and tools back into her trunk, his clothes now completely soaked. He wiped the rain from his face and closed the trunk with a solid thump. "Happy to help," he said simply. Emma reached into her purse. "Please let me pay you for your trouble." James held up his hand. "No need, just glad I could help." Emma looked at him, seeming surprised. She put her purse away and extended her hand instead. "You're a good man, James Wilson. I won't forget this." James shook her hand, smiling. "Drive safe, Emma, and good luck with your meeting." He watched as she got into her car, waved once more, and drove away into the rainy evening. James stood there for a moment, rain washing over him. Despite being cold, wet, and tired, he felt that warm glow that comes from helping another person. It was the same feeling he got when one of his teens at the center made progress or showed up when they said they would. As he walked back to his own car, James had no idea that this simple act of kindness, changing a tire in the rain for a stranger, would come back to him in ways he could never imagine. Emma's words, "I won't forget this," would prove more true than he knew. James drove home, thinking only of a hot shower and dry clothes, unaware that his life had just changed course. James woke early the next morning after a restful sleep. The rain had stopped, and sunlight streamed through his bedroom window. He felt good about helping Emma the day before. As he got ready for work, he hummed a cheerful tune. After a quick breakfast of toast and coffee, James headed out to his car. The morning air felt fresh after yesterday's rain. He slid into his old Ford, started the engine and pulled away from his small house. 5 minutes into his drive, James noticed something in his rearview mirror. A black SUV was behind him. It was big and shiny with dark-tinted windows that hid whoever was inside. At first, James thought nothing of it. There were plenty of SUVs in town. James turned left at the main road toward the community center. The black SUV also turned left. Still, James didn't worry. This was a common route for many people heading to work. But when James made a right at the small bookshop, then another right down the narrow side street he used as a shortcut, the SUV was still there. Now a small knot began to form in his stomach. Just a coincidence, James muttered to himself, gripping the steering wheel tighter. He made one more turn, an unusual left that most people didn't take unless they knew the area well. The black SUV followed. James's father's words echoed in his mind. "Son, the world isn't always fair. Sometimes people will judge you before knowing you. Always be aware of your surroundings." The memory made James sit up straighter in his seat. Was someone following him? And if so, why? James pulled into the community center parking lot and found his usual spot. Through his mirror, he watched as the black SUV drove slowly past the entrance, then parked across the street. The windows were too dark to see inside. With a deep breath, James got out of his car and walked into the center, trying to act normal, but he couldn't help glancing back at the SUV one more time. Inside, James tried to focus on his work. Today, he had a group session with 5 teenagers who were struggling in school. As they talked about their challenges, James found himself looking out the window every few minutes. The black SUV remained parked across the street. "You okay, Mr. Wilson?" asked Toby, one of the teens. "You keep looking outside." "I'm fine, Toby," James said, turning back to the group with a smile. "Just a bit distracted today. Now, where were we?" After the morning sessions, James went to get lunch at his favorite cafe down the street. As he walked, he kept checking over his shoulder. There was no sign of anyone following him on foot, but when he reached the cafe, he spotted the same black SUV parked a few spaces down. The knot in James's stomach tightened. This was no coincidence. "The usual, James?" asked Oliver, the friendly barista with the bushy beard. "Yes, please," James replied, taking a seat by the window where he could watch the SUV. Oliver brought over James's sandwich and coffee, then paused. "Everything all right, mate? You seem on edge." James hesitated. Should he tell Oliver about the SUV? Would he sound crazy? "Just feeling a bit watched today," James said finally, glancing out the window at the black vehicle. Oliver followed his gaze. "That fancy SUV? Been there about 10 minutes. Someone you know?" "I don't think so," James said, "but it's probably nothing." James ate quickly, his appetite less than usual. When he left the cafe, he walked briskly back to the community center, resisting the urge to run. The afternoon dragged on. James led a workshop on job applications, helped a young girl with her math homework, and fixed the center's always jamming printer. All the while, the black SUV remained across the street. By 5 o'clock, James was tired and worried. As he locked up the center and walked to his car, he checked his phone. Should he call the police? But what would he say? "A nice car is parked near me." They might not take him seriously. Or worse, they might misunderstand the situation completely. James drove home carefully, taking a longer route than usual. In his mirror, he saw the black SUV following at a distance. Not too close, but always there. When James reached his street, he didn't pull into his driveway right away. Instead, he drove past his house and around the block. The SUV followed. Now James was sure someone was definitely following him. Finally, James parked in his driveway and hurried inside, locking the door behind him. Through his front window, he watched as the black SUV drove slowly past his house, then disappeared down the road. James checked all his doors and windows were locked. He made himself a simple dinner but could hardly eat. His mind raced with questions. Who was in that SUV? What did they want? Was it connected to someone from the community center? A troubled parent, perhaps? Or was it something to do with Emma, the woman whose tire he'd changed? That night James lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Sleep wouldn't come. Every sound made him tense. A branch scratching against the window, the hum of the refrigerator, a car passing by on the street. Tomorrow, James whispered to himself in the darkness. Tomorrow I'll find out who's in that SUV. With that decision made, James finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, wondering what the next day would bring and who was watching him from behind those dark tinted windows. Remember to cite any information from the web search tool results using tags. For example, information from the search results. James woke up early, his mind made up. After a night of little sleep, he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't keep living like this. Being followed was making him nervous and afraid. It had to stop today. He got dressed quickly and made a simple breakfast, though he barely touched it. His stomach felt tight with worry. As he sipped his coffee, James made a plan. He would not go to work today. Instead, he would try to talk to whoever was in that black SUV. But he would be smart about it. It needs to be somewhere safe, James said to himself. Somewhere with people around. He washed his cup, grabbed his keys, and headed out to his car. As he expected, the black SUV was already parked down the street. As soon as James started driving, the SUV pulled out to follow him. James drove carefully through town, checking his mirror every few seconds. The SUV stayed behind him, not too close, but always there. James didn't drive to the community center. Instead, he headed toward the large supermarket on the edge of town. At this time of day, it would be busy with shoppers. There would be security cameras too. It was the safest place James could think of for what he needed to do. The car park was half full when James arrived. He chose a spot near the front of the store, where many people were walking in and out. He parked his car and waited. Sure enough, the black SUV drove into the car park just a minute later. James watched as the SUV moved slowly through the rows of cars. His heart beat faster. Now that the moment had come, he felt afraid, but he was also tired of being afraid. Tay. SUV spotted his car and headed toward him. It pulled into an empty space right next to James's Ford. This is it, James whispered to himself. Time to find out what's going on. He took a deep breath, opened his car door, and stepped out. He stood, tall beside his car, trying to look brave even though his legs felt shaky. He watched the SUV, waiting. For a long moment, nothing happened. The SUV's engine turned off, but no one got out. The windows were so dark that James couldn't see inside. Then, slowly, the driver's window began to roll down. James held his breath. Who would he see? An angry person? Someone dangerous? "Hello again, James," said a woman's voice. James blinked in surprise. He knew that voice. He stepped closer and looked into the SUV. It was Emma Thompson, the well-dressed woman whose tire he had changed yesterday in the rain. "Emma?" James said, confused. His fear turned to surprise. "You've been following me?" Emma nodded. She looked embarrassed. "I'm so sorry for frightening you. I realize now how scary this must have seemed." "But why?" James asked. He was still standing by her car, not sure if he should feel relieved or even more worried. "Why would you follow me around all day?" "I've been trying to catch up with you," Emma explained. "After you helped me yesterday, I realized I didn't get your phone number or address. All I had was your name and that you worked at the community center. I tried calling there this morning, but no one answered." James remembered that he hadn't gone to work today because of the SUV. Because of Emma. "You could have just come into the center and asked for me," James said. His heartbeat was slowing down now, but he was still confused. Emma sighed. "You're right. That would have been the normal thing to do." She paused. "But I wanted to speak with you privately first. What I have to discuss is, well, it's important. It could change everything for you." James looked at Emma carefully. She was dressed in another expensive-looking suit. Her car was worth more than James would make in years. What could someone like her want with him? "What do you mean?" James asked. Just then, a few drops of rain began to fall from the grey sky. Emma looked up at the clouds. "Would you like to get out of the rain?" she asked. "We could talk inside the supermarket cafe, my treat, of course." James hesitated. Part of him wanted to say no and walk away, but another part was curious. What? Did Emma want to tell him? What was so important that she had followed him all day? All right, James said finally. Let's talk. Emma smiled and opened her car door. As they walked toward the supermarket entrance, the rain began to fall harder. James noticed that Emma was carrying a large folder under her arm. Inside, they found the small cafe area near the front of the store. It was quiet, with only a few other people sitting at tables with their coffees. James and Emma found a corner table away from everyone else. "Can I get you something?" Emma asked. "Coffee? Tea?" "Just tea, please," James said. He still felt strange about the whole situation. While Emma went to order their drinks, James sat at the table and tried to make sense of what was happening. Yesterday, he had helped a stranger change a tire. Today, that same stranger had followed him around town and now wanted to talk about something important. It didn't make sense. Emma returned with 2 cups of tea and a plate with some biscuits. She sat down across from James. "I know this must seem very odd," Emma began, "and I'm sorry for scaring you. It wasn't my intention." "What is your intention?" James asked directly. "Why were you following me?" Emma took a deep breath. She put her hand on the folder she had brought. "James, I have a proposal for you," she said. "Something that could help a lot of people, including those teens you work with at the community center." James looked at Emma's serious face, then at the mysterious folder on the table between them. The rain tapped against the windows of the supermarket as he wondered what this well-dressed woman could possibly want with a community center worker like him. Emma stirred her tea slowly. The small cafe in the corner of the supermarket was quiet, except for the soft music playing from hidden speakers. Rain tapped against the windows, creating a peaceful background sound. "I wasn't completely honest with you yesterday, James," Emma said, looking up from her cup. James tensed. He had been right to be worried. But what was the lie? Who was this woman really? "What do you mean?" he asked, his hands gripping his mug tightly. Emma sat up straighter. "When we met, I told you I was heading to an important meeting. That was true, but I didn't tell you everything about myself." She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. She slid it across the table to James. He picked it up and read it. "Emma Thompson, Chief Executive, Thornfield Foundation," James read aloud. He looked up, confused. "What's the Thornfield Foundation?" Emma smiled. "We're a charity organization. We provide money to community projects all across the country, small groups that make a big difference in people's lives." James turned the business card over in his fingers. "So you're not just a business executive?" "No," Emma said. "I run the foundation. We have helped build youth centers, fund after-school programs, and support community leaders for 15 years now." James nodded slowly, trying to understand. "And why are you telling me this? Why follow me around town when you could have just called the center?" Emma leaned forward. "Because of you, I made it to that meeting yesterday. It was with our board of directors to talk about new projects to fund. New youth programs." She paused, watching James's face. "After we parted ways, I couldn't stop thinking about what you told me, about your work with troubled teens. So I looked. You up online?" James raised his eyebrows. "You researched me?" "I did," Emma admitted. "I found articles about your community center, about the programs you run, the awards you've won for your work with young people, the changes you've made in their lives." She took a sip of her tea. "James, your community center, the work you do with those young people, it's exactly the kind of project the Thornfield Foundation wants to support." James sat back in his chair. This was not what he had expected at all. He had been worried about danger, about trouble, not about whatever this was. "I don't understand," he said finally. "So you followed me around town to tell me about your foundation?" Emma reached for the large folder she had brought with her. "I followed you because I wanted to meet with you privately, away from your center. I wanted to give you time to think about our offer without pressure from your colleagues or the kids." "Offer?" James repeated. Emma nodded and opened the folder. "We want to offer you a partnership, James. The Thornfield Foundation wants to provide funding for your community center." She turned the folder around so James could see the papers inside. There were photos of renovated buildings, new computer rooms, sports facilities, and numbers. Large numbers. This can't be real, James whispered. He stared at the figures on the page. It was more money than his center had seen in all the years he had worked there. It's very real, Emma said. This is what we do. We find people who are making a difference and we help them do more. James looked up from the papers, his mind racing. But why me? Why my center? There must be hundreds of places doing good work, Emma smiled. Sometimes the most meaningful connections happen by chance. When you helped me yesterday, you weren't seeing a potential donor. You were just being kind to another human being in need. She pointed to a page in the folder. We've researched your center thoroughly. We know you're struggling. Budget cuts, old building, not enough staff. Am I right? James nodded slowly. Yes, we do what we can, but it's hard. Every year, the money gets less and the needs get greater. Tell me about your center, Emma said. In your own words. James took a deep breath. We work with kids who have nowhere else to go. Some have problems at home, others are struggling at school. Many of them have given up on themselves. His voice grew stronger as he spoke about his work. We give them a safe place, we help with homework, we teach skills, but mostly we just show them that someone cares, that they matter. Emma watched him, nodding. And what would you do if you had more resources? If money wasn't a problem? James's eyes lit up. We could fix the roof that leaks every time it rains. Buy computers that actually work. Hire more staff so we could help more kids. He paused, then added quietly, We have a waiting list, you know. 23 kids who need help, but we don't have the space or the people to support them. Emma pushed the folder closer to James. With this funding, you could help all of them, and more. James turned the pages, looking at the numbers again. It was enough to transform the center completely, to change everything. Why would you do this? He asked. You don't know me. I know enough, Emma replied. I know you stopped in the pouring rain to help a stranger when you could have driven by. I know you refused to take money for your help. I know you've dedicated your life to helping young people who need someone to believe in them. She smiled. Sometimes, James, a simple act of kindness creates ripples we can't imagine. Yesterday, you created a ripple. Today, I'm here to turn that ripple into a wave. James looked out the window at the rain. He thought about the center, about the leaking roof and the broken heating system, about Toby, who was so good with computers but had nowhere to use that skill, about Lisa, who needed a quiet place to study away from her crowded home, about all the kids on the waiting list. Is this really happening? He asked quietly. Emma nodded. It is. The board approved it this morning. We just need your signature to begin. James looked back at the folder. At the possibility it contained, his heart felt full and his mind was racing with ideas, all the things they could do, all the lives they could change. The center is struggling, James admitted again. We do our best, but it's never enough. With this, he looked up, his eyes bright with possibility. We could help so many more kids. That's exactly what we want, Emma said softly. To help you help others. Outside, the rain began to ease, and a beam of sunlight broke through the clouds, shining through the window onto the folder between them. The sun shone brightly on the freshly painted walls of the Wilson Community Center. The old grey building that had stood for years with its peeling paint and broken windows was now a bright blue with white trim. A large banner hung over the entrance. Grand reopening today. People gathered on the small lawn in front of the center. There were mothers with young children, teenagers in school uniforms, and older folks from the neighborhood. Local shopkeepers had closed their shops to attend. Even the mayor was there, wearing his best suit. James stood at the entrance, hardly believing his eyes. 6 months had passed since that rainy day when he stopped to help Emma change her tire. 6 months since she had followed him in her black SUV. 6 months of hard work, planning, and hope. Is this really happening? James whispered. Emma stood beside him, smiling. She wore a simple blue dress instead of her usual business suit. It really is, she said. Look at what you've done, James. James shook his head. What we've done, all of us. The old building had been completely transformed. Where once there had been cracked windows and a leaking roof, now stood a modern community center. Inside were new classrooms with fresh paint and bright lights, a computer room filled with new laptops, a small library with comfortable chairs, and hundreds of books, a kitchen where kids could learn to cook, and at the back a proper sports area with basketball hoops and space for indoor games. But the best change, James thought, was the 3 new staff members. No longer would he have to run everything alone. Now there was Mary, the retired teacher who ran the homework club, Tom, the sports coach who organized games and taught teamwork, and Lily, the young artist who helped kids express themselves through painting and drawing. Ready? Emma asked, holding out a large pair of scissors. James looked at the crowd. In the front row stood Toby, Lisa, and the other teens who had been coming to the center for years. Behind them were the 23 kids from the waiting list, now all regular visitors. And there were new faces too, kids who had heard about the center and come to see for themselves. Ready, James said, taking the scissors. The mayor stepped forward with a small speech about community and working together. Then he turned to James. Mr. Wilson, would you do the honors? James stepped up to the red ribbon that stretched across the entrance. His hands shook slightly as he positioned the scissors. To new beginnings, he said, and cut the ribbon. The crowd cheered and clapped. Some of the younger kids jumped up and down with excitement. The local newspaper photographer took pictures as James and Emma shook hands with the mayor. As people began to move inside to explore the new center, Emma touched James's arm. Let's take a walk around, she said. I want to see everything. They walked through the building together. In each room there was something new to admire. In the computer room, Toby was already showing younger kids how to use the new laptops. In the art room, Lily had set up an exhibition of paintings made by the teens. In the library, 2 small girls were curled up in beanbag chairs, already lost in books.